சிவாய நம. திருச்சிற்றம்பலம். சிற்றம்பலத்தான் திருத்தோழன் சுந்தரன் நற்றமிழ் மாலை அணிநாவலூர் கொற்றவன் நம்பியாரூரன் பேர் நாம் ஒரு காலோதினால் தப்பிக்கும் தீவினையேதான். சிவ திருச்சிற்றம்பலம். I want to take this opportunity to sincerely thank the International Hindu University and its organizers for putting this event together. My sincere thanks to Swamiji as well, because he has been supporting this event continuously throughout, and thank you my dear friends, and glad to meet you all again in the next discourse on Thirumurai. We have already spoken about our topic today is 4th, 5th and the 6th Thirumurai. On the first session, when we had a brief overview, we indeed went through a little bit. So let's do a small recap of what we have already seen, and then I'll straight away move on to today's topic. The Thirumurais 4, 5 and 6 is given to us by Thirunavukkarasar. He's from the 7th century, and his parents are Pugadanar and Madiniyar. He had a wonderful sister, Tilagavadiyar. If at all we have to hail for having a great saint like Thirunavukkarasar, I'm sure we need to hail Tilagavadiyar. She has equal, if not more, blessings to bring up Thirunavukkarasar to us, and what we are going to discuss about today is also about his praises. His original name is Marulnikiyar. That was his original name given by his parents. When he was around 9 years old, his sister was engaged to a chief in the then kingdom of Chola, and he was a very well known person and well known for his valor. Apparently there was a war, and he died before the wedding could take place. So his sister, Thirunavukkarasar's sister, took up widowship since the engagement was already over. She was already committed for this marriage. This came as a very harsh news for the parents, and they passed away shortly after this incident. His sister also decided to leave this plane and unite with her husband to be. That's when the small little boy, who was only 9 years old, was pleading in front of his sister to say, "Please live for my sake." You know how ladies are, right? So the sister decided to live for the brother's sake, who was only just 9 years old, and she could not really see or bear the kids suffering in this world without anyone. Since young age, our hero, who was Thirunavukkarasar, he has been witnessing only sorrow, death, pain, all those harsh things in life. Life was not so easy for him. That struck him really hard. He slowly started admiring another religion which was advocating more on compassion and love, which is only one portion of Saivism. If you take it as Saivism as Ganges, one tributary could be, talking about compassion. Another tributary could be love. But one religion who was only talking about compassion and love, he got fascinated towards that. Since he got enticed in that religion, he started to follow that path. Marulnikiyar, which was his original name, learns a lot of text and slowly grew up to become a teacher and started preaching the practices of that particular religion. He stayed there for full 45 years of his lifetime. 45 years. His prime time was all in the other religion. Now the question is, what happened to his sister? Yes, the sister who decided to live for the sake of the brother apparently lived without any support. So she decided to take up Uravaram. Uravaram is a very beautiful Tamil name which is given to the work that we do in a temple. Basically, we clean the temples or remove the weeds and make sure the gardens are in a proper manner, wash the vessels and cloths over there. This is basically called as Uravaram, and she took that with so much of sincerity. While she was doing that, her Persistently, she had only one wish, which was in front of Lord Shiva. She used to ask him to bring back her brother. This was her sincere prayers persistently. We all know deep prayers will surely be heard, and that happened. Imagine from our point of view, right? Today, our point of view, if we look at it, if someone is waiting for another person, probably we would be waiting for a couple of years, couple of decades. I doubt that, right? I mean, we don't have that kind of maturity, or rather, we don't wait for someone for almost 45 years. The sister did that. She waited for full 45 years. Only thing she had was hope. Nothing other than hope she had. But Lord Shiva heeds to her request and tells her that in her dream, it's time for Lord Shiva to reclaim her brother and not to worry. Following this dream, Marulnikiyar, who's turned out to be Tharumasenar, that is his new name in the new religion, contracted a severe ulcer kind of a stomach pain, which turned out to be very, very painful, immense pain, unbearable pain. That pain brought him the thought of his sister. Until now, he never thought of his sister, or don't know whether he thought about it. I mean, we cannot just justify on that part. I don't think it's just justice to say that word, but he never approached his sister. But he approached the sister once he got this particular disease, which is called as a simple one, which is ulcer, but it's a very severe kind of an ulcer. He started to repent for his mistake and seeks for her forgiveness, because he is very certain that he is going to pass this body off. Apparently, his sister, who's a very ardent Saivite, gave him the sacred ashes, Vibhuti, and asks him to take up Uravaram in the temple. So asks him to start working on in the temple, cleaning the place and all these. This is the time Lord Shiva gives him the name Thirunavukkarasar, and he sings his very first padigam, which is called as Kutrayinavaru. Today, in the interest of time and because of a bit of a greediness that I have to share a lot of information, I'm skipping through the verses, but we are going to discuss about the verses because we are trying to do a simple transliteration of all the padigams. So apparently you will be seeing this also, because this is also one of the very important padigam. Anything related to stomach, it can be even like uterus related, stomach related, basically the digestive system, right? The entire intestinal problems, all those you can actually read this padigam, and you can see a lot of benefit by doing that. So later we will be discussing it in another occasion, so I'll just move on. Thirunavukkarasar Saivam journey starts here. He rather restarts his Saivam journey, I have to say. So he starts, but it was not a bed of roses. It was rather he had to face a lot of hurdles, and the hurdles were given to him through the religion that he embraced earlier. I mean, anyone would not want to leave a very brilliant person from their religion. Apparently that could be one of the reason. They did not want him to leave and go off, so they went to the extreme of even killing him. The religion which preached compassion, and our Marulnikiyar was attracted towards that compassion. When you look at the way how they treated him later, you will start questioning, is this what we call it as compassion? He was summoned by the king. The king is also a follower of the other religion, so he was summoned by the king, and the reply was a beautiful padigam, literally translating as, I am a slave to Lord Shiva, and I don't want to be scared, or I'm not afraid of anyone, including Yama. He says, I'm not even bothered about the god of death, because I belong to Lord Shiva, and that is the place he says, I am a servant of Lord Shiva, because he is choosing that particular path to be a servant, and Lord Shiva is his master. That is the path he chooses. So apparently you will see that a lot in his padigams. Later, when he didn't have an option, he went and met the king, because the king summoned him and whatever. Then it was not because of force that he had to go. He went willingly, because he knows that if he doesn't want to go, then the soldiers will be in trouble. So because of compassion, he said, okay, let me visit the king. But initially he didn't want to, but later he did. What happened after that is the king took him in custody and gave a lot of trouble. The first thing is they mixed poison in food, and he was fed with that food. He sang a beautiful padigam. Even today, if we are suffering from food poison, we actually read that padigam and don't know what's happening to that poison. It's just getting digested off. Even today, we are able to face that, see that. Even when we go out somewhere and we don't know what kind of a food it is, you're a bit scared. Usually what we do is precautionary measure. I read the padigam first and then I consume the food, so that it's like it's an antidote for the food. Again, it depends on how we are taking it up anyways, right? So this beautiful padigam breaks the poison and he comes out as fresh as a rose. So the so-called enemies are helpless now, so they want to try out another method. They tie him with a very big rock and they throw him into the deep sea. He sang a Namachivaya padigam, which is basically to talk about Namasivaya, and the rock started floating, and it became a floating rock and safely landed him onto the shore. Even today, this event is celebrated in a place called as Karai Yeriya Kuppam, literally translated as the place where the rock has actually shifted to the shore. Simple translation, literal translation means that. So that plan also, that plot also, it's not a plan, rather it's a plot, right? So the plot also failed. Next one they did was, he was buried until the neck, and his head was on top of the earth, and he was left for an elephant to kick his head. He sang another beautiful padigam. The elephant bowed down in front of him. It just turned around, and it created an entire new saga with the people who had initiated this entire plan. So you would see that the way how padigams helped our Thirunavukkarasar was amazing, and even today we are able to feel that and see that. He chose the path called as Sariya Margam. 4th, 5th and 6th Thirumurai, you will see a lot of reference to this particular Sariya Margam. Sariyai is physically very, very toiling. It is basically to do something like very hard work, physically toiling work, like cleaning the temples, even the pathways to the temples, cleaning the unwanted weeds in the garden, and also the pradikshina path, and removing the thorns and making it an easy approach for the other devotees. This is basically called as Sariya Margam, and he chose that as his predominant way of worshipping Lord Shiva. Probably it's because of his sister's influence, we don't know, but he chose that path. And even today, if you look at it, there's a lot of groups which does this Thevaram, and they take Thirunavukkarasar as their guru and they follow his path. And if you look at it even today, one of the most difficult work is the physically toiling work, which is called as the Sariya Margam, which is 25% of mind, 75% of body. So the entire physical body is one of the important aspect over there. Now the next question we may have in mind is, this is a burning question in anyone's mind. Even I had this earlier when I started in this path. Why did Thirunavukkarasar choose this path? There are so many easy paths out, right? Why did he purposefully or willingly chose this path? There's an answer in his Thirupadigam itself. He felt guilty of his 45 years of practices in another religion. So he started feeling as this body was built for 45 years with some other food and some other influence. So what he wanted to do was just wash away this sin by using the same body for doing service to Lord Shiva. In fact, this is a very important lesson for us at this point in time. A little bit of brief understanding we need to have is, how is this karma accumulated, right? We need to actually talk about that before we proceed on. If you look at the way how karma is accumulated, usually it is accumulated based on, maybe we can call it as deeds or organs or senses, basically three. Those are the physical body, the words we use, and our thoughts. Those are the three ways we accumulate karma. And the interesting truth here is, the same key that we used to lock the used for locking should be used in order to open it as well, isn't it? That's the same logic over here as well. Karma accumulated by words. All we have to do is start singing praises of Lord Shiva. It can be bhajans, it can be thirumurai, or even you can start giving discourses and all these. Those are going to be washing away our karma, which we accumulated by words, which we do quite a lot anyways because of our profession or whatever. The next one is karma accumulated by our thoughts. The only way for this is prayers, meditation, prayers. That's the only way to get rid of this particular karma. Now imagine the third one, which is this body. Karma accumulated by this body. Of course, we need to do physical toiling work in order to cleanse this off, and that is basically cleaning the temples and all these. Now the next question is, where do we find a temple in places especially like Singapore or Americas, where we can do physical work? And I mean, if you look at it, the temples are so neatly done, and somehow it's all granite stones, and somehow it's an air conditioned temples. And where are we going to do a physical toiling work, right? I mean, when you go into this kind of places, we hardly sweat. Even when we do pradakshina, we hardly sweat. Rather, we wear all our socks and everything while we are doing our pradakshina, because it's pretty chill over there. Now the next question is, how do we perform these kind of actions for especially people who are outside of India and who wants to do this? When we talk about Uravaram, we need to also redefine this according to the time. When we say Uravaram, it is obviously cleansing the place and making the gardens and all these. But when we are not able to do that, any physical work in order to help Saivam grow is also good. Let me give you a simple example. Conducting these kind of sessions is also one type of Uravaram, because it is not easy. It is pretty difficult to organize the session, talk to the speakers, make sure the flyer is ready, the information is sent out in a timely manner, setting the Zoom setup. All those are not an easy task. This is also requiring a physical toil, which means it's also Uravaram. Imagine our Padigam project that we are doing. We are trying to do a transliteration. I do have two beautiful souls to help in that, Pavitra and Bhupati. They are helping in typing out the Padigam in English. That is also a kind of Uravaram, because it's a form of physical work that they are doing. So if you look at it, Uravaram has to be, it's not just when you hear the word Uravaram, let's not think about, just a big, huge, massive tree and we are cutting down that, or, climbing on top of a temple and, cleaning that up. Of course, yes, those are Uravaram, but according to the time, according to the place where we live, time and space is everything, right? So we have to redefine anything that we do for making sure that we are using this body to cleanse our karma. Oops, sorry. So cleansing our karma, that is what we are looking at when it comes to our Uravaram. Now, with this idea, with this approach, if we start, then it will be more easier for us to, whatever we do, once we start thinking that it is for Shiva, it is for him that I'm doing it. To be very honest, when you're cleaning your house, if you start thinking that Lord Shiva's house, I'm cleaning it for him, I'm cleaning it for his souls, his relatives, his friends to be living in this place, because our family is also his relatives, right? So once we start thinking from that angle and you start cleaning your own house, that is also called as Volavaram. Okay, now let's look at the Padigam, because that's what we started with. This is a brief understanding about how this entire Padigam concept came in, and we are moving on to the next phase now. If you look at it, his Padigams were consolidated into the 4th, 5th and the 6th Thirumurai, a total of 312 Thirupadigams. And if you look at the verses, which is like 4 lines each, right, 3066 verses in total, and the remaining we lost for, I mean, we know that, to termites anyways. The 4th Thirumurai, which has got 113 Padigam, 5th Thirumurai has 100 Padigams, and the 6th Thirumurai has got 99 Padigams. That is in total that we have seen. Now, how is this organized? The 4th, 5th and the 6th Thirumurai, how is it being organized? That's a beautiful approach for us to look at it. If you look at this, right, 4th Thirumurai is all about history. It's all about history. Beautifully, Thirunavukkarasar is documenting. Everything comes in as documentation. Right from what he was suffering with his stomach pain, and then when he was tied against the stone and was thrown into the sea, he was fed with poisonous food, he was plotted to be killed with an elephant. All these are beautifully documented in his 4th Thirumurai. If you look at it, it's a very good starting point. So you can take this as the configuration document rather, yeah. So that is how you can look at the 4th Thirumurai. Sorry, old habits die hard, right? So going back to the IT context, he also documents his devotee, who's called as Appudi Adigal. We will also be discussing about him later in some other instance, but Appudi Adigal is one of Thirunavukkarasar's follower. He's documenting, Thirunavukkarasar is documenting about this also. And there's another Padigam that we were discussing for attracting money. That was basically written by Thiruñana Sambandar, and 1000 gold coins were given to him. Our Thirunavukkarasar, when he is going to Thiruvavudurai, that particular place, he is documenting that also. And another very interesting factor that you can see in his life is, he is like a small little baby. You can imagine like a small kid. He goes to Lord Shiva every time and says, okay, I want this now. I've made a mistake. I want to know that you have forgiven me, so you have to do this. You know, he will always keep something like a request. One request he had was to have Nandi and Tirishul on his biceps. He wanted a tattoo of Nandi and Tirishul on his biceps. That was his request. And Lord Shiva did that. So if you look at it, he will raise up with some kind of, wish, and he will say, I know I made a mistake. 45 years I have been scolding you when I was in the other religion. So I want to know whether you have forgiven me. So I need this. So I need this. You know, he will again and again, and you could see that he was really struggling with this guilty feeling. You can really feel that in his Padigams. Yeah, it's like beautiful way of expressing his guilt. So that's very obvious in his Padigams. And one place he also goes and he requests for the Tiruvadi Diksha. It's one of the highest level of Diksha, where the Guru will place his foot on the head of the disciple. He is going and asking Lord Shiva, I need that Diksha, and he is receiving that also. So you can see that he places everything like a request, and he says, I want this, and he is very adamant in his request, and he is very focused. Maybe I'm not sure if I can use the word adamant. Probably he's very focused, and his requests are so strong that even Lord Shiva doesn't have an option. End of the day, he had to abide by that wishes. So that is about the 4th Thirumurai, which is all about history. The next one is the 5th Thirumurai. where he talks beautifully about the grace of Lord Shiva. I just want to share one particular Thirupadigam, which is from the fifth Thirumurai, which is a very beautiful Padigam, and anyone who has a fear of death, they should really read that. And I'll just explain the meaning of it, because I think it's worth our time to think about it. In that, it's imagine something like a HR interview, right? I mean, since you guys know that I'm a management consultant and I'm a management trainer, so I'm talking from a HR point of view here. Imagine we have a HR interview. The HR manager is Yama, Lord Yama, and he's recruiting his staffs. And we need to talk about the ground rules and the do's and don'ts, right? So Lord Yama is actually telling all the do's and don'ts to his disciples. So he says, you see, you can go and take anyone's life. According to their time, you can go and take their life. But, you know, whenever we hear the word but, we'll get a little bit scared and bit skeptical, right? So the so-called employees, new employees, they was like, oh, what do you mean by but? And then Lord Yama is saying, but when you see someone with holy ashes and when you see someone with Rudraksha, just bow down to them, run away from them. Don't even try to take their life. So these guys are again asking a question. What if we unknowingly go near to him? That is where Lord Yama is saying, if you go near them, just praise them, pray to them, run away from that place. And he will, in almost like 8 to 9 verses, right, he will be talking about all these. He says, you see, when someone is wearing all the Rudraksha and all these, be careful. But there are certain people who will not be wearing holy ashes, they will not even have all these Rudraksha. But when you go near to them, they will say Sivaya Nama. Once you hear that, bow down to them, run away. So it's like a, you know, Yama is giving the do's and don'ts and giving basically an orientation program. You can imagine something like an orientation program where the HR manager is actually giving all these do's and don'ts to his disciples and all these, as in their workers, so-called workers. And the last verse is the highlight, and he says, I have told you whatever you are supposed to do. If you are not obedient and if you are not abiding by these rules, then don't ask me about the consequences. You remember there was one incident where Yama was kicked because of Markandeya. Yama was kicked by Lord Shiva, right? So he still remembers that pain. So he just touches his shoulders and he says, after that the consequences are yours, it is not mine. Don't come and ask me, don't come and blame me. The verses are like, you know, when you read it, obviously it is to negate the fear of death. That the Padigam is meant for negating the fear of death. But when you understand and when you read it, right, it will be hilarious. Honestly, you will be like laughing on and rolling on the floor, and it's so beautifully written to say, as a HR manager, he is talking about the do's and don'ts. That is one of the beautiful Padigam. And there's also another verse that he is talking about, which is to talk about he's very, very against all the cult and you know, going to multiple deities and praying and this and that. So he's totally against that. So he's very, very strongly talking about, you know, that kind of practices, and he wants to negate it. The one God worship kind of Ekam, he is actually very much in support of that, and we are able to feel that. And he's also in one of the Padigam in the 5th Thirumurai, he will say, you know where Lord Shiva is, you don't need to search anywhere. When you think of him, he will be there. The temple that he resides is those people who are thinking about him, those people who are singing his praises. That is where Lord Shiva resides. You don't need to go to temples and search for him in most of the temples or do whatever rituals and all these. For the sake of doing rituals, if you are going to do, there is no benefit out of it. So he is actually talking a little bit stern he's very, very stern in his verses. When you look at it, the way how he is approaching is something like we have to learn, and you say, okay, we have to learn here. If not, it's like a blunder in our life. And so the fourth Thirumurai is about the history. Fifth Thirumurai is about the grace, Lord Shiva's grace. Sixth Thirumurai is all about his experience, And when you relate with that Padigam, and when you start singing that, you will automatically you will see that tears are coming off your eyes. It's so much of an experience it's a bundle of experience, rather, probably I have to just put it up that way. And in that he says, who is Lord Shiva to me? He's my mom, he's my dad, he's my sister, he's my uncle, he's my aunt. No one said that Lord Shiva is my uncle, or no one said it's an aunt, but he even goes to the extent of building in that kind of a rapport or relationship. And earlier he was asking for Nandi and Trishul to be tattooed, to be there on his biceps, right? So once Lord Shiva gives him, he describes about that experience in the sixth Thirumurai. Same ways, the Tiruvadi Dikai, which we were talking about, the highest level of Diksha, once he receives it, he is documenting the experience in the sixth Tirumurai as well. And there's a very, very beautiful verse, that one of the verse he says, which starts as Gangaivar Sadayar. Basically, the meaning of that song goes this way: I don't care what caste someone belongs to. I don't care whether they are a human being or a non-human also. It can even be an animal. They can even have leprosy, because leprosy is considered to be one of the worst punishment that we can get for our karma. So he says, I don't care whether they are meat eaters, even they are killing cows and calves and all these, and they are eating it. I don't even care whether they are having leprosy, but if they are saying Sivaya Nama, and if they are taking Lord Shiva in their heart, they are my God. He says that I'm okay to worship them, because that's the place where Lord Shiva resides, right? So he goes down to the extent of saying that there is nothing called as a caste, creed, color, whatever discrimination. Only discrimination we have is someone who is worshipping and someone who is an atheist. So he is very, very clear about that particular segregation, and that is one. And also there is a beautiful Tiruthandagam, which is called as Potri Tiruthandagam. Even today in our Shiv Puja, we usually recite that, and one of the Padigam is equivalent to Rudram. Rudram in Sanskrit, right? We take that as an equivalent of that, and we talk about it again, like what we were discussing earlier. We don't segregate. At least our saints have not segregated anything on language, because Thirunavukkarasar is mentioning that Lord Shiva himself gave Tamil and he gave Sanskrit. So we are not supposed to segregate those two. The language is only for us, not for God. Of course, if I don't know Tamil, if I don't know Sanskrit, if I say, oh Lord, please save me, obviously Lord is going to listen to that and he can understand it. The language is not for him, the language is for us. As long as we are able to relate with that, as long as we are able to appreciate and know what is, because if we don't understand a language and when we are praying, we won't be able to relate with that. The relative feeling is the most important one. So we take one as a Sri Rudram, equivalent of Sri Rudram also as part of it. And there's another Tiruthandagam also, which is called as Periya Tiruthandagam, Tani Tiruthandagam. In those, right, he goes to the extent of saying, if you are living in a place where there is no temple, don't call that as a place. According to me, it is a simple desert, or it is a simple graveyard. He goes to the extent of saying, if you don't have a temple in a place, it is basically a graveyard. You can see how strong he is, when he's talking about the concepts, he's very, very strong, and he's very determined in the concept that he is bringing forward as well. So that is about the 4th, 5th and the 6th Thirumurai. One practical, one very practical experience that we have to share here is our Thirunavukkarasar wanted to visit Kailash. You can imagine at this particular time, 21st century itself, it's a humongous effort to visit Kailash. I'm sure we all would have, at least we would have done our Google searches and all these to see how difficult the path is. You can imagine how difficult it would have been in the 7th century. He started walking. He walked all the way to Kasi. After he reached Kashi, from there he was not able to walk. Imagine the distance, right? So he walked all the way. After that he could not walk. He started crawling. And finally he had to literally drag himself to Kailash. But imagine his determination. Looking at his desperation, Lord Shiva came directly and he said, please go away. If you won't be able to see Kailash, so you can go away. Lord Shiva came in a disguised manner, because Lord Shiva doesn't come directly, right? So he came in a disguised manner, and he's convincing Thirunavukkarasar to say, okay, you go back. I don't think you're in the right direction and all these. And you know what was the answer from Thirunavukkarasar? He says, I don't care. This body anyways, I'm going to leave it here. Either I'm going to see Lord Shiva. If not, I'm just going to die off. It's okay. But I am determined in my task and I'm moving towards that. Looking at his determination, Lord Shiva said, okay, then do one thing. There is a pond here. Get a dip in this. I will show you Kailash Darshan. The pond is nothing but Manas Sarovar. So he took a dip in Manas Sarovar, and when he was coming out of the place, out of the pond, he woke up at a place called Thiruvaiyar, one of the most awesome must-visit temples in Tamil Nadu. I had a couple of miraculous experience in this temple too, but it's a beautiful place, a must-visit place. When he rose from the pond there, he saw Kailash Darshan. Even today, until today, it is celebrated in a grand manner. This is how determined, the concept of determination, we have to really learn from Thirunavukkarasar. In other words, I would also say Appar or Thirunavukkarasar is synonymous to determination. If you open up dictionary.com and if you are looking at the meaning of it, it's as simple as determination is Thirunavukkarasar. To that extent, you can see what kind of strength he had in his. Imagine, he left Saivam when he was around 9 years, around 9-10 years. 45 years he was in another religion. He came back. Around 70 years, all these are happening. Can we imagine that? At 40, 50, 60 years, we are struggling to get up from a place. Once we get up, we are struggling to sit in a place. Whereas our Thirunavukkarasar, he has done so many temples, even until the last minute, Lord decided to give him salvation. The last minute is coming in when he was in Thirupugalur. That is the place where Appar was, Thirunavukkarasar was, he went on with Lord Shiva. When he was there, Lord Shiva decided to, take him off. Until that very moment, he was cleaning the temples. Not only cleaning the temples, if you read the 12th Thirumurai, which is the Periya Puranam, you will know he was actually cleaning the place or the pathway towards the temple. Imagine today, what are we doing? When we visit a temple, when some prasad is given to us, we just eat that, and then we just don't even wipe it properly. We just wipe it on the temple's stone, the carved pictures and all these. Isn't it wrong? Right? If you look at it, what we are doing is, the moment we visit a temple, we are accumulating good karma. The moment we drop all these kind of things in the temple, we are accumulating bad karma. What is the point in having this, right? So what the path of Thirunavukkarasar is basically to say what kind of a life to lead, what kind of a simple life. He was a saint all along, and he did not marry, he did not set up a family, or he was 100% in this path of renunciation, and he went on with this path, and he totally submitted his life for Lord Shiva. That's the way how we have to see him. Determination, that is the most important one. In Kailash, before he took birth, when he was practicing his penance, he was called as Vagisar. When he was born, he was known as Marul Nikiyar. When he moved on to another religion, he was known as Dharumasenar, because that's a position that he got as a teacher, so he was called as Dharumasenar. On his returning back to the mother religion, he was called as Thirunavukkarasar. This particular name is given by Lord Shiva himself, but the name that we all call him as of today is Appar, which literally translates as dad. This was given to Thirunavukkarasar by our Thiruñana Sambandar saint. He was the one, when he saw Appar, Thirunavukkarasar, he looked at him and he said Appare, and that word stuck. And even today we call him as Appar. You know, 4th thirumurai, 5th thirumurai, or 6th thirumurai, we say, oh, Appar Thevaram. That's how we call it. It's not because it is short, but because it is because of pure love. We see him as our dad, who's actually guiding us in the path of Saivism. His journey was not smooth sailing boat, it was rather very, very rough sea, but his spirit was very high and very determined. If we read his Padigam from Appar, we can only interpret determination. Some of his phrases, if you look at it, it will be like, you know, someone holding our shirt and just giving a slap on our face. Literally we will feel that, and we will be like, oh my God, what kind of a life have I led all these days, you know. That kind of feeling we will be getting. And he gives us not only a slap, but also a path to get rid of this karma or this pain or whatever we want to call it. Let's sing the praise of Thirunavukkarasar, who's Appar, and get his blessings too. I know it's a very, very short introduction that I have given, but at least it will be a very good start. When we start discussing about his Thirupadigams, it will be more easier, and you can expect some of his Padigams to come on as well, because some of beautiful medicinal Padigams are there. Like, for example, getting rid of even there's one Padigam, even if someone is something like, you know, they are already in the death line, right? I mean, even usually we say, right, death line. Even if someone is in death line, there is one beautiful Padigam from Appar. Once we read that regularly, even that death line will be broken and it will be burnt down to ashes. It is that kind of very determination is what we are looking at, and also the same concepts you will be able to see in his Padigam. So with this, I think I'll conclude my session today. I know it's a weekend and some of you are already started working or in a holiday mood, so I'll stop here. So we are ready to take up any questions if you have any.